So there are a lot of hotel owners out there who are working closer to 80, 70 hours a week, and they are struggling to step away from their hotel, from their business, so they can work on it rather than work in the hotel. So the reason for this course is to be able to teach hotel owners how to basically have their hotel work without them, and also make sure that it's still growing while they're away. And that's what I'm going to be teaching you today. And in this course, I'm going to be walking you through one of our clients named Daniel Moretti, because when he first came to us, he was struggling a lot. Like, he felt trapped in his hotel. He was working about 80 hours a week. It was very, very grueling on him. He couldn't take time off. Like, he hadn't taken a vacation in over 4 years when he first came to us. And this was beginning to take a toll on him. Physically, his health was deteriorating, and he couldn't spend time with his family. And that was really, really eating him up. So we took him on for 6 months, and we transformed his whole hotel. And now he works just 5 hours a week. His hotel now has an increase in 45% revenue. It takes only 7 steps, and that's what we basically did to transform Daniel's hotel from him working 80 hours to him working just 5 hours. So grab a seat and let me walk you through the steps. So the absentee method has just 7 steps. Now, the first step is basically where we're going to diagnose reality. This is where we're going to look at your mindset. We're going to look at the cost of actually having the current mindset that you have, which is stopping you from actually having a hotel that operates without you. The second step is where we're going to map out the chaos. We're going to find out where the bottleneck is in your whole operations for your hotel. The third step is going to be where we're going to build the systems. So this is where we're going to build your SOPs, your checklists, and things like that to make sure that the operating system of your hotel functions and can run without you having to step in. The fourth thing is we're going to invest in leaders. We're going to then build a leadership team that basically replaces you in your organization. The fifth step is going to be where we're going to master the numbers. And this way you're going to know where your profits actually come from. What is driving the most of your profit. And also, I'll show you 4 things that we can fix in your hotel right away, and that will save you a lot of money. We're going to fix some of your profit leaks. The sixth thing is where we define success. And we're going to then create what your new job description is going to be now that you are no longer working in the business, but rather you're working on the business. The seventh step is where we launch with confidence. This is where we build you a digital twin of your whole operations. I'll explain further when we get to that step. Perfect. So step 1 is going to be where we diagnose reality. And what this all means essentially is just looking at what mindsets or what kind of mindsets do you currently have that is holding you back. And I'm going to use Daniel as an example, because when he first came, there were some beliefs that he had about business in general that was really, really holding him back. Because unless we can fix the mindset, there's no real transformation or change that can really happen. Because no matter what we do to Daniel's hotel, it's always going to revert back to the way he's always done things if we don't fix the mindset. And here's some things that he believed when he first came. He believed one of the reasons as to why he was always working in the business, is that he didn't have enough time to train other people to do some of the things he wanted to do. Another thing he thought was that he could do it better than anyone else could do it. And here's the thing, Daniel came from, before he owned his hotel, he was working in the hotel industry for quite a long time. So there's no part of the hotel chain that he couldn't step in and fix. He know how to step in when it comes to front desk, housekeeping, because he had already worked in hotels, so he knows a lot about hotels. And he felt like he could do it better than anybody else he could hire. So which is why he was still the only one who was doing most of everything in the hotel, and that was what was causing him to spend a lot of hours there. One of the reasons though. The next thing is he believes that hotel is a 24/7 business, and that's why he had to be available 24/7. So anytime his staffs called him 2 a.m., 3 a.m., he was always up running in there to go put out fires for his hotel. Now, these beliefs are, let me just flat out just say it, this is just wrong. These are wrong beliefs to have, because if that were so, Marriott hotel would not be able to operate over 9,000 hotels in over 150 countries. The only reason they're able to do this is because they have better systems. So to achieve this, you just need better systems. And the reason why Daniel can't go from this to be like Marriott is because he doesn't have the right systems in place. That's why he believes all of this, and his reality actually shows him what he believes, simply because of this. So now, let me show you what the actual cost, because we have to break it down for Daniel, for him to actually see what it's actually costing him if he continues to remain this way, or he continues to think like this. The first cost that you have with this kind of thinking is operational cost. Now, let me break this down to you. Daniel was working on average 60 hours a week. On average, sometimes he works 80, sometimes he works 70, depends. But on average, when we did the calculation, he was working 60 hours a week. He paid himself $100,000 annually. If you broke it down to a number of how much his hourly rate is, he's basically working for $32. His hourly rate is $22 per hour. Now, you have to ask yourself, what are you doing in the hotel? Because you have to remember that for every hour that you work in the hotel, you're paying yourself $32 an hour. So now we basically audited what Daniel was doing in his hotel. You will find that he was actually working on emails, things like emails. Sometimes he would even step in to fix the toilet sinks whenever it was broken. Fixing the toilet sinks. Sometimes he would step into front desk and do some of the reservations or checking guests. Sometimes he would even take online orders or food orders to rooms and stuff like that. So you would realize that he was paying himself premium rate, which is $32 an hour, for low-level task, because he could have easily paid somebody else who would do this task for $15 an hour. So, him having this kind of mindset or operating his business this way was costing him a lot of money. Rather, he should be spending his time on much more important things that are worth $32 an hour and higher, instead of working on such low-level tasks. So that's what the operational cost of having this kind of mindset is. The second level of cost is personal cost, and that could be different for every particular person. But for Daniel had a family, he had a daughter, he had friends, and he doesn't spend time with them, and this was taking a toll on him. He couldn't even go to the gym to work out and take care of his health. And you have to understand, these are all the personal costs that you could be incurring if you continue to have this kind of mindset. So you have to have the wake-up moment where you realize, okay, I can't continue doing things this way. There has to be a way to operate similarly to how Marriott operates. Because how are they able to operate 9,000 hotels, operate and manage 9,000 hotels in over 150 countries? It's very simple. All they did is just have proper systems. And this is where it takes us to step 2. We're going to move to step 2. And this is where we're going to actually map out the entire chaotic system that Daniel had. Because listen, whether you do it intentionally or unintentionally, you still have a system. It could just be a chaotic one, and we just simply have to change that from a chaotic one to a proper organized system to achieve basically the goal that you want to achieve. So the next step, what we're going to do is we're going to map out, and I'm going to show you what Daniel's system looked like, which was chaotic, what it looked like when he first came to us. Step number 2 is where we map the chaos. Now, when it comes to our system and building systems, you first of all want to map out the current system and then create where the ideal systems you want for your hotel to be like. And then we'll begin to fix all of that. And that's how you start building proper systems. So the first thing we do is build a service blueprint. Now you might be wondering, what is a service blueprint if you've never heard of that term before? What a service blueprint is just basically the full process a business follows from when a customer shows interest in your product or service up until when they leave satisfied. So in our hotel industry, what that will look like is from the moment a customer is interested in going to our website to want to book a stay with us up until the moment they decide to check out and leave the hotel. So all of that process is what we call the service blueprint. And that's what we currently mapped out for Daniel. So this is what Daniel's service blueprint looked like before. Very chaotic. I'll explain basically how to do this, and you can also do this for your own hotel as well and build this for your hotel so you can see how it runs and where the bottleneck might be for your current systems. So the service blueprints is broken down into 3 layers. You have your customer journey. Basically, a customer comes to your website, they check in, they place an order for food, they request for room service, room cleaning, and then they check out. You have your staff. So this is basically, this here is the line of interaction, which is basically who interacts with who in each of this step. So when a guest wants to check in, who do they interact with? Your front desk. So you can see that. So that's basically what all this area is. Now on the bottom side is where we have the system. So this is the back end. These are all the systems that enable you to basically deliver a great service to your customers. So this is what a service blueprint looks like. The first issue that you can see here is that everything revolves around Daniel. If there was an issue, for example, there was a group booking that came in through an OTA that front desk is not familiar with, guess what they do? They revert to Daniel. They push the issue to Daniel for him to have to come in and solve that particular problem. Housekeepers sometimes will miss certain things. They will forget to put towels. They'll forget to put the proper toiletries. Little things like that was costing him a huge toll because of guests leaving poor reviews about housekeeping not doing the proper thing. So he had to step in and do proper inspection every time they clean a room. And that's terrible because he becomes the bottleneck. Obviously, he is the one handling some of the other things, his payroll, his scheduling, training. He involved himself in most of all of these things. But at the end of the day, the main thing is that all of this just simply shows him as being, although in his mind, he thinks he's doing great, he's helping everybody, he's helping up his team. But having things like this makes your team lazy. It makes your team not able to think for themselves or problem solve for themselves. And they don't feel supported because they don't even have the right tools to deliver an exceptional job to your customers. So this hinders your team more than you are actually helping them. So we have to remap all of this for Daniel so that he sees exactly what things should actually look like. So this is a service blueprint before, when he first came to us, and this is the ideal service blueprint he should have for his hotel. And I'll show you clearly. First off, you can just see the difference. Here you notice everything revolves around Daniel. None of that here. In order for us to deliver a great experience for a customer, we want him to be anywhere in our service blueprint map. So what we replaced him with is the proper SOPs and checklists. So that is what we use to replace Daniel. The reason why Daniel was the main forefront here was because everything lived in Daniel's head. So there was nothing written down, there was no SOPs, there was no checklist. And there was no clearly defined role for most of the staffs on his team. they didn't know exactly what they needed to do. They don't know what success looks like for their particular role, which is what we eliminated and fixed in this new service blueprint. So, take for example, if a guest books on the platform or any OTAs, it goes to front desk. If they have any issues or problems or how to actually do their job, they refer to the SOPs and checklists, which is basically a replacement of what Daniel is over here. Same thing for the waitress staff in F&B. If they have any issues or they want to know how to do the job really well, they just have to go back and refer to their SOPs and checklist. Same for housekeeping. We built a proper cleaning checklist so that they would know how to clean the room properly and keep it consistent. And then we have a proper auditor who goes in and actually who is assigned to inspect the room based on the cleaning checklist to make sure that the room is up to the brand standards for the hotel. Same thing as well, we had a proper integrated softwares to make things much easier for the team, because having all of this is great, but you need to give them the right tools to be able to deliver the job. So for payroll, for scheduling, for training, things like that, you have to have the right tools to be able to give your team to deliver. And with having all of this, you definitely can replace Daniel and make sure that not only will the hotel function without him, it would be way more successful if it's done this way. So next is what I'm going to teach you next is how to build the proper systems. I'm going to explain what SOPs are, what checklist is, and how you can even start to begin to create this. So remember, all we did here was just map out the current service blueprint that he has, and you can do this for your own hotel right now. Just truthfully, just analyze how things actually work. Where do you step in? What issues do you fix? Just that. Then you can then try and recreate what the ideal situation should look like. And anywhere where you step in, and the reason you step in is simply because you have the knowledge to fix that particular issue. How about we figure out how to actually write them and document it? Because here's the thing, if it's not written, it doesn't exist. Now, let's go to step 3. So step number 3, this is where we actually build the systems we talked about. So we looked at what the chaotic blueprint was, and then we're looking at what the new proper service blueprint we want to actually achieve. And basically, what is the way for us to achieve this is by having proper systems. Now we're talking about systems, but what is a system? A system is just simply a repeatable process that delivers a consistent outcome. So if our goal is to always have a smooth check-in for every single guest who comes to our hotel, we want to make sure that we create the right systems so that we can have the process of delivering a smooth check-in, the process where we make sure we're able to replicate it every single time and that the outcome is always consistent, which the outcome will be a smooth check-in in this particular example that I just gave. So every hotel needs 3 of these systems to be working cohesively to be able to achieve a really successful hotel. And the 3 systems you need is, the first one is your operating systems. Now, the operating systems for a hotel is how the hotel runs on a daily basis. The people system involves the people you hire and also how you train them to basically execute your daily systems. The last one is your technology systems. These are the tools that you give your team to deliver on all of this. So this helps them do their job properly and then make sure that they're delivering on a daily basis. So now the first thing we're going to look at is we're going to look into operating systems. This is where your SOPs come in. This is where your checklists come in. You know how important this is because we talked about that in when we saw the chaos blueprint. So let's look at operating systems. The system we're looking at first is the operating systems. And basically, this is how the hotel runs on a daily basis. So the systems that makes the hotel run on a daily basis. Now, we've been talking about SOPs and we talked about it a lot when we're talking about when we're building the service blueprint. So what is an SOP? SOP simply stands for Standard Operating Procedures, right? And what is it exactly? Think of it as a recipe for example, if I wanted to make chocolate chip cookies, for example, and I wanted to make it as good as maybe you make it, you just simply need to hand me the recipe, exactly what you do and how to do it, so that I can then replicate the same chocolate chip cookies that you make so that it tastes exactly the same like you do it. That's basically what SOPs are. Now, you pair the SOPs with a checklist. And a checklist is basically just a detailed instruction to make sure that you don't miss any step while I'm baking the chocolate chip cookies. So I follow it exactly the way you do it. So imagine two different bakeries. If, for example, one bakery has the proper list of all the recipes and the steps it takes to make the perfect chocolate chip cookie, and you have another bakery that doesn't have it written down, they just have it, or it's a secret or the whatever. Now think of it, which of these, if they hired a new staff tomorrow, which of these two bakery would actually be successful or have consistent outcomes, basically creating the same cookie every single time? You would find out that the one who has the recipes and the checklist would end up delivering the exact same chocolate chip cookie every single time, and it's consistent. That's what makes it great versus the other one who doesn't have it written and somebody just has to come in and create their own style of chocolate chip cookie every single time. Now, somebody might come in and they could do a great job and create a good cookie, but somebody else could come in as well and just say make a terrible cookie. Now, you as the customer, think of which of these businesses you want to purchase or do business with. You would obviously go with the one who gives you the same cookie every single time. You have to think of your hotel in that same way. So if your objective is to deliver great customer service, you want to be able to deliver great customer service every single time the same way. Not if I come in on Monday, it's great, but if you go in on Wednesday, it's terrible. That's why you need SOPs checklist. Hope that's clear to you. I hope you understand that. So, what should be in your SOPs? Because yes, a hotel is not bakery. We're not making cookies, but what should you have in your SOPs? Now, your front desk could have something like, okay, how do you check in a guest? Break that down in your SOPs. How do you handle complaints? If a guest comes in and they have an issue, how do you handle that issue? How do you upsell? What is the way a front desk agent is able to upsell a guest to basically generate more revenue for the hotel? How can we do that and make sure we achieve the goal every single time we do it? Okay, so now if it's housekeeping, what should be in your housekeeping? It should be something as, how do you clean a room up to the brand standards of your hotel? How do you report issues? If there's something wrong in a room, how should they go about reporting the issue so that it gets resolved? If it's F&B, for example, how do they take food orders of a guest? How do they handle allergies? So those are the things you want to have in your SOPs. When it comes to engineering, how should engineering respond to maintenance requests? That should be something you should put in your SOPs. How do they prioritize tasks? Which tasks should they put a high priority on? Which tasks should they do first, depending on how they all come in? That's something you want to have in your SOPs. Then you want to take all of this and then you turn it into a proper checklist. That's what you want to create, and that's what you want to do for your hotel. If you were about to do this, how I'd recommend you go about it is just take one department at a time. If you still feel like this is overwhelming and it's too much, I have already done this already. So you can use my own checklist. It's in the link below. Just click on it, and I've already built out the checklist for every single department, and it's actually customizable. So you can just take it, tweak it, and change it for your own particular hotel and basically what tasks you guys do in the hotel. So feel free to grab the link down below. If you want to really make sure everybody is actually adhering or keeping to this standard, what you now need is proper leaders. Because systems, well, we just created keeps the standard, but to make sure that everybody is keeping to that standard and actually doing the checklist, following the SOPs, you need the right leaders. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So this is step 4. We're going to talk about investing in leaders. So this is where people systems come in, right? Because at the end of the day, we need to realize that all systems we just built, they're not going to run themselves. It's actually leaders that run the systems to make sure that it's properly enforced, like we mentioned previously. Now, there's 3 lessons we're going to learn in this chapter, and I must tell you, this chapter is very dense. It's very, very dense. There's a lot of things that we're going to be learning here, but I'm going to break it down as easy as possible so you can grasp them and make sure it's very simple to understand. But at the end of the day, there's 3 objectives that we want to learn from this ideal chapter. The first thing we want to do is, how do we select the right leaders so that we're not promoting the wrong or hiring the wrong people? That's what we're going to look into. And there's a lot of mistakes. I'm going to talk about the mistakes a lot of hotel owners make when they're trying to select the right leaders for their hotel or their organization. The second thing is, how do we train them? Most people, even if they do hire the right person, they usually drop the ball when it comes to hiring. So they just, once they bring them aboard, hey, say like, go figure it out yourself. That's typically how most hotel owners handle this. But we're going to show you how to properly train them once you've hired them. The third thing we're going to talk about is, how do you build accountability into the systems? Basically, how do we have our systems hold our people accountable to make sure that they're delivering on what we expect them to deliver for our hotel? So the first thing we're going to look at too is how to select the right leaders. So let's break that down. How do you make sure that you pick the right leaders? Now, this is a lot of mistake a lot of hotel owners make when they're trying to hire a new manager for their hotel or hire new leaders for their hotel. Now, the first mistake that a lot of hotel owners make is promoting the best doers. Now, this is a huge mistake. Now, I'll show you an example. So what most hotel owners will do is, just because a housekeeping staff is good at folding sheets, all of a sudden you decide to make them the housekeeping supervisor. That is just wrong, because the skill of being a leader is not the same as somebody who knows how to do the task. They're not the same at all. Now, the person who is actually really good at folding clothes may not know how to hold people accountable. And that's one of the jobs of a good leader. They may be afraid of confrontation. And that's one of the duties of a good leader. So you cannot promote them simply because they are good at doing the task. The second mistake that a lot of hotel owners make is that they rely on loyalty and not training. So somebody has been working for you for 7 years, and you automatically feel like they should be a manager or they should become part of your leadership team. Loyalty does not mean simply or equate to being a good leader. Yes, they've showed up to your hotel every single day and they've done what they're supposed to do every single day. But that does not mean that it's going to make them a good leader. Because leadership is a skill. It's something that you have to train. It's something that you have to constantly keep on learning. There are books and thousands of books that have been written on leadership. It's a skill. It's actually something you can improve on. But you cannot simply just say, because someone has been loyal to your company for a long extended period of time, that automatically begins or is going to make them a good leader. If you make this mistake, what ends up happening is that you lose a really good staff who is good at doing what they're supposed to do, and then you end up trading it for a terrible, terrible leader. The third mistake that a lot of hotel owners make is that they might get the right person for the job, but they don't set any clear target for the person. So you have a new employee who you've employed to be a manager for your hotel, but you don't even tell them what they are responsible for. You just bring them to the team and you just push them out there, go figure it out. And you tell them simply because they have Or maybe when you pick them based on the experience they had in other hotels, and you say, okay, since they're coming here, I don't have to think about training. That's not true. You still need to train them. You still need to explain exactly what they are responsible for in your organization, the way your organization operates. You have to tell them what the outcome they need to deliver is. So, meaning that what is the objective that they need to strive for? You also need to tell them how each of this outcome it's going to be measured so that they know what they're working towards. You cannot play a soccer game and not have a goalpost and basically know how to track the goal. Okay, all right, if the ball goes into the net, that's 1 point. You need to be able to track things. You need to be able to know what the goal is, how to score the goal, and basically how you're going to be tracking the goal that they're basically achieving. Now, as long as you don't make any of these three mistakes, you are able to build a proper leadership team. But avoid these three mistakes. And the way we're going to solve this problem is by, first of all, I'm going to show you how to pick the right person for the job, for your leadership team. I'm going to show you basically how to train them to be really good leaders. I'm going to then show you how to hold them accountable for the outcomes. So we need to pick the right person for the job. So we need to hire the right leaders. So what most people typically do is just have or obsessed about the job description. So they focus on creating a job description, but what I want to recommend is that you incorporate a job scorecard to your job description so that you're able to pick the right people. So what a job description will look like is simply just telling them, okay, I'm hiring you to manage my front desk department. That's great, that's fine. But if we were to include a job scorecard, it would be so much more better. The reason why it would be is because the job scorecard is basically having clearly defined outcomes that you want them to achieve in their role. So take, for example, if I want to hire a front desk manager, what I would incorporate to as well is a job scorecard that would say, okay, for right now, we are having issues with our overtime. It's too high. I want you to bring that down to 0. Right? When it comes to upselling, we're not doing a lot of upselling at the front desk. I want you to increase that. And I want you to increase that by 5%. So you're not just hiring somebody just to hire or just to manage the front desk team with some vague outcomes. You want them to achieve specific outcomes that you can measure. So you're able to measure the results and they're able to measure the results. The reason why it's best to go this route is because you have something tangible to hold them accountable to. So if somebody is not doing good at their job, you can clearly see exactly why they're not doing good at their job because you clearly already stated what you want them to achieve. So if they're working with you for 3-4 months and your overtime is still high, you know, okay, they are not doing good at their job. Versus if you had no clear scoreboard on all you had was a job description, how do you really quantify whether they're good at their job or not? You would just go, I think maybe this person is not doing a great job. I don't feel. But why not just go this route where you can actually measure success? Where if they are not achieving this ideal target that you've set, you can tell them, hey, listen, I've reviewed what you've been doing for the past 3 months. And when we hired you, our objective for you was that to bring the overtime down to 0 and increase our upsell for front desk department by 5%. You haven't achieved neither. So either we work on this or you let the person go. So that's the difference as to if you can introduce this, it changes the game for your leadership team and how you relate to your leadership team. The next step is making sure you ask better interview questions. A lot of hotel owners simply just go in and Google interview questions and just ask random questions during interviews without having the real intention behind every single question. Now, what I want you to do is be intentional about the question you ask. And the way you can do it is this. I found this is the best way to categorize whoever comes in and applies for a particular role in your organization. Now, this comes from the Ritz-Carlton model where they hire they don't hire problem solvers, they hire system enforcers. That's from the Ritz-Carlton model. And I'll teach you what exactly it is. It's very profound and it's very interesting. Now, when you're asking questions now during the interview, I want you to filter people into different sections, into different categories. You filter them into the hero section. I'll explain what a hero is, and then filter them into a system enforcer, and I'll explain what a system enforcer is. So, a hero is someone who jumps in to fix every single problem. A system enforcer fixes the problem, the root cause, so that it never happens again. A hero is reactive, so he waits for the problem to happen before he steps in and fixes it. A system enforcer is proactive. They see this is going to be an issue down the line, therefore they build systems to make sure it doesn't happen. A hero is just someone who goes in and and basically fixes the problem himself. His team become really dependent on him because they become reliant. Well, manager so always comes in and fixes the issue anyways himself. Why would I have to figure the solution? So he creates a team that is overly reliant on him. A system enforcer builds a very resilient team because because their objective is to make sure the team has all the tools they need to succeed. So a typical example of what a hero would do is if there's a problem, they would blame the staffs. That's what a hero would do. A system enforcer would fix the checklist, not blame the staff. That means there's a system issue, not a staff issue. That's typically how they think. If you're doing interviews, the best kind of questions you want to ask are scenario-based questions. So if this happens, how would you react to it? So say, for example, you have a large group that comes in and the night team forgot to make the keys. I forgot to inform housekeeping that the group was come the next day and they're all there. How would you handle the situation? Now, what a hero would do is they would step in and fix the issue themselves because, yes, they are doers, correct? But here's the thing. The issue is bound to happen again. And guess what? They're just going to keep blaming somebody else and never really fix the issue. So they're just basically a band-aid to the situation. It doesn't solve anything. It's just a temporary solution. What you want is a system enforcer. What they're going to do is, first of all, they will step in and fix the issue currently. Yes, that's good. But they're going to make the team more resilient because they're going to then build a proper, okay, all right, let's do a checklist. Let's create a checklist to make sure that the night team doesn't skip this again, so that this doesn't happen again. Let's find a way to build a system so that this doesn't repeat again. And that's who you want to hire, especially when it comes to leadership. These are the kind of people you want to have in leadership. Not people who go in and just fix the problem and blame somebody else and blame 19. Rather, the system enforcers blame the system, meaning there's an error in the way we're doing things. We need to fix that system so it doesn't happen again. That's the kind of thinking you want your leader to have. Perfect. So you have picked the right person for the job. You've hired your new leader. Now, here's where a lot of hotel owners drop the ball. So you did really good in picking the right person, but after that, what happens next? Most hotel owners find it very, very daunting to have or feel like they don't need to train some of the new leaders that come on board to their team. And which is what we're going to talk about here. How you train them to be good leaders for your own hotel. Not just to be any good leader, but good leaders for your own hotel. Here is the principle that I want you to take and make sure that you drum it into your whole leadership team. You want to train your leaders to coach and not do. I feel like this has been the main point that I've been trying to make this whole entire time that I want you to truly grasp. The leaders don't do, they coach. Now, I'm not saying that they should not know how to do the task because that's very important. What I'm saying is that you need to understand it's very important that they coach your team to have a truly successful team. Because if you don't train them this way, what you end up having is leaders who end up being like you. That sounds so judgy. And I don't mean to be judgy. I'm not trying to be judgy. But our whole objective here is to create a leadership team that can coach your team to make sure they execute the job where you are nowhere involved in the equation, right? This is what poor leaders look like. They step in, they do the work, they fix the problem themselves, and they don't like delegating. That's bad. Good leaders, it's very simple. They just enforce the systems. And I'll explain how. So when you hire a new leader, what you want is you want to walk them through a 14-day standard blueprint. And the reason why this is important is because you find that when you hire new staff, the first 14 days are the most pivotal times for any new employee, regardless of if you're hiring a new manager or hiring new staff overall. The first 14 days is very important because this is where you begin to set the standard. And if you drop the ball here, it's hard to get them back on board. Like, it's really hard. So you have to set the standard at the very beginning. That's the best time to get them to stick to the standard that you've created for your organization, right? So what this entails is that you have to properly train them. And a lot of leaders find it, okay, I don't have time to spend time to train them properly or have something more important to do. No, if you take the time to train somebody that comes into your organization the first 14 days and you give them quality time, it saves you a lot of time down the road because they don't have to keep coming back asking you questions. How do I do this? How do I do that? So you might feel, I don't have the time to do this, but guess what? You're going to pay for it at the long run. So it's very important to take those 14 days and truly drive in your hotel standards and the way you do things for your own hotel into them. Like, you really have to do that. So, which is why I've created the 14-day standard blueprint. It's very simple and it's something you can use for everyone on your team. But this one we're going to talk about now is specifically for leaders. Now, if you want a 14-day blueprint, I do have it the link down below and you can grab it for your team. But let me explain what this is. The first 3 days, once someone comes into your team, what you want to do is you want to explain your non-negotiables for your hotel. This is what we don't absolutely do. This is what we do. This is how we are, so that they understand you and your organization. You want to also explain the systems, the why behind every single system. The reason we do this is because of this. They need to truly understand it, because if they're going to be system enforcers, they must understand why you have those systems in place. Because with that information, they're now better to hold your team accountable to make sure that they are doing it the way you want it to be done, up to your own standards for your own hotel. Understand? So that's very important. And that's what all of this is. Now, the next day is from day 4 to day 10. What you want to do is you want to be able to teach the leaders on how to run the whole team using the checklist. The managers should be able to run a whole shift with just using checklist. Then you have to teach them how to basically get feedback using the SOPs. So meaning give feedback to your team using the SOPs. So, for example, if it's housekeeping that did not clean the room up to brand standards, you can simply refer back, well, according to our SOPs, you need to clean the room to this level, right? And you fell short because you're missing certain items according to the SOPs. So it removes emotion, it removes argument, it removes any of that because it's clearly written in the SOP. This is how you clean the room up to the hotel's brand standards. And if you miss one step, if you miss something, you failed. Now they're able to give proper feedback to your team using the SOPs. They need to be able to track all your metrics. So take, for example, remember we mentioned earlier, when we were using the front desk example, where we said, we want you as a manager to increase our upsell percentage by 5%. They need to understand all your metrics and how you calculate those metrics so that they can be able to track it for their team. So that's why they need to understand the numbers. The next one is from day 11 to day 14. What you do here is this is where they move from training to actually being trusted to run the entire team, right? So you've gone through all the steps, and this is where you begin to either shadow them or step in and watch how they give feedback to your team, how they talk to the team, and how they basically execute all your orders, basically. And that's what this is. Now, remember I said, just because we focus so much on this doesn't mean they should not know the task. They have to know the task. The skill is very important. But the reason why I'm focusing on this is because this is where a lot of hotel owners drop the ball and feel like this is too much for them to do, or it's just, they just feel lazy when it comes to this aspect. Or they'll rather just show them how to do the task. Okay, this is how you use PMS, this is how you use this, that's it. And then after you do that, that's it. And then what you end up having is that you end up having down the line, having to micromanage, having to step in and babysit your managers if you miss this step. So if you're having that particular issue, this right here is the solution to that particular problem. Now, I do have a 14-day blueprint down on the link, so click on it and you can have access to it so you can see exactly how this runs. So remember, this does not just apply to your management team. This applies to every single new hire you have into your organization. You should create one for every single one. So the next thing we're going to talk about is basically how to hold people accountable. Accountability is what we're going to focus next. You have to build your accountability into the system. And I'm going to explain why. If you don't have accountability, what you end up having is you have to babysit. Let me explain. If you have no clear expectation as to what you want your team to do, what you end up having is that you have to keep reminding them to do their task. If you have no clear metrics as to how good or what success actually looks like for that particular role, what you end up having to do is you have to step in to begin to fix every error that they make. If there's no consequence for doing things the wrong way, you're going to have to step in and have to rescue them from every chaotic situation they find themselves in. Essentially, you are just babysitting your whole entire team. This applies from you to your leaders and your leaders to your team. It flows, it trickles down that way. So, what you want to do is you want to make sure that the expectation is very clear. The objective is very clear. The result is very clear with your team. And I'll explain. You pick certain metrics that you know are important to you. For example, it could be cost. The budget for costing. Each department should have an ideal budget they should stay within. So that's an example of what a clear metrics will look like. Another example could be your review scores. How well is your hotel doing? So if it's out of 10 and your hotel is below 5, there is a lot of issues that needs to be fixed. And that's what I mean by the numbers tell them exactly where to focus. So if you pick the right things to track, the goal here is that you don't even have to step in to tell them what to work on. They just simply know by what you've clearly stated or what you're obsessing about. They now can look at the numbers and know, well, our review score is out of 10, we are at 5. Let me change my marker. So, out of a review score of 10, we are sitting at 5. And what is the most complaints? The most complaint is coming from housekeeping about cleanliness. Guess what? That's their objective. That's what they need to work on to fix. You don't have to tell them exactly what to focus on if your metrics are that good. Another example could be your labor cost. If you're having way too high overtime, or you've specified, okay, all right, this is our target for our labor cost should be anywhere between 30% or lower, or between 30 to 35%, which is the ideal for a hotel. If you go above this, if your labor cost is sitting at 45, guess what? Your managers have to step in to fix this problem right here. Not you having to tell them what to do. Like, I hope you're following what I'm saying. Because that's why all of these things I just told you is very important. Your expectation has to be very clear. Keep labor cost at 35 to 30%. The metrics has to be very clear. And the consequence for not meeting this has to be clear as to what is going to happen if they're not meeting this target. And with this, you will find that you no longer have to babysit your staff. They are now more proactive because now they take ownership on the outcome of the results. Now, this applies to your leaders. Now, your leaders in turn apply this same logic to their own team. Now, how you hold them accountable is you, as the hotel owner, you now hold weekly meetings with your leaders. Now, when you have your weekly meetings, it's very simple now. It's not difficult. Your meeting should be very simple. Where are we at when it comes to labor cost? They tell you, okay, we're at 45%. And before you even have to say anything, they tell you, okay, we already know that you want us to be at 30 to 35. We're going to work on this, and this is our plan to make sure we fix it. Full stop, that's it. Now, the next time you have a meeting, this should be much lower. And if they can't bring it down lower, guess what? It's much simpler to have the difficult conversation now. It means that you are not good at your job. You could tell the management team, you are not good at your job because you haven't achieved the goal here. And it's very clear. Now, if you have to have a difficult conversation of having to let them go, it's very clear and simple. It's not an emotional conversation. It's not a he said, she said, or my word against their word, or I feel like this person not being good at their job. You have a clear metrics to judge them on. And if they're not meeting that target, guess what? You let that person go because they can't deliver. Next is, this is how your managers implement. So the same way you're treating your managers, right? Your managers in turn do the same thing for your staffs. Now, your managers do something called spot checks, or they act as auditors for your organization. Example, if cleanliness is an issue and is causing you to have a review score of 5 out of 10, right? Your managers understand this is a problem, this is something they have to fix. What they can now do, the same way you have weekly meetings, they can have spot checks and audits the work housekeeping is doing. So they go in after every room is clean with a checklist to make sure everything is being done properly. They could have random spot checks to go in and check the tasks are being followed and meeting up the SOP standards. So it's the same thing you did to them. It's the same thing they're going to do with spot checks to their team. And that's where they act as auditors. Because before, you had to step in every single time to go and do this. Now you've basically delegated this role to your managers. Now, all you need to create here is basically create an auditor's checklist. Simple, clean, one-pager that a manager, for example, housekeeping, goes into the room after the room has been cleaned to basically check everything is done. And then they can now submit that to you to double check, or they can then end up finding where the issue is coming from. And you, Jeff, there's no how your numbers are not going to improve if you have this system in place. So if you need this audit checklist, I have it down below. Just click on the link and you can have access to it. Okay. So what we have just learned so far is make sure you pick the right person for the job. So meaning pick the right leaders. Second thing we learned is basically make sure we train your leaders. And we train them using a 14-day service blueprint. And then lastly is basically how to hold them accountable and make sure we build accountability into the system so that the standards never slip again. And this way you're able to build a proper operational team that no longer needs you. The next thing we're going to go into is step 5. And this is my favorite part of this whole entire course. And this is where we talk about mastering your numbers. I'm going to show you 4 leaks, 4 profit leaks that you can fix right now that would save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in your hotel. Stay tuned.